Monday, 8 a.m. Beep. 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 The shrill cry of the alarm clock cut through the fog of my consciousness like a scalpel. I shot upright, my chest heaving, my forehead slick with cold sweat. The same nightmare. The crash, the ocean, the suffocation. The feeling was so real my heart was still pounding in my ears. Gasping for breath, I turned to the smart clock on my nightstand. The liquid crystal display was clear. Monday, 8:00 a.m. Sunlight sliced through the blinds, striping the bedroom floor with bright bars of light. The faint scent of Isabella's perfume, Byredo's No Man's Land rose, lingered in the air. Everything was normal. I sat up, rubbing my throbbing temples. I'd had a bit too much to drink at the gala last night. The hangover was kicking in. The space next to me was empty and cool to the touch. Isabella must have been up for a while. She always got up early for yoga. I threw off the covers and went into the bathroom. The man in the mirror looked pale, his eyes shadowed with fatigue. That was me, Leo Vance, founder of Apex Innovations. To the world, a tech prodigy, a winner. Only I knew how much of myself I'd sacrificed to keep this massive empire running. After showering, I changed into casual clothes and went downstairs. Just as I expected, Isabella was in the living room, dressed in a white yoga outfit, stretching in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows. Her body was sleek and graceful, every movement a study in artistic beauty. The morning light cast a soft golden halo around her, making her look like a figure in a painting. "You're awake?" She heard me and turned, offering a gentle smile. "Breakfast is on the table. Your favorite omelet." "Thanks, you didn't have to," I said, walking over and wrapping my arms around her from behind. For a split second, her body felt rigid in my embrace before relaxing. "Go on, eat before it gets cold," she said, patting my hand. I let her go and sat at the dining table. The omelet was cooked to perfection. My wife was the perfect woman, graceful in public, a master in the home, managing my life with flawless precision. "By the way," I asked while eating, "Marcus mentioned last night that you drew $5 million from the company account. Was it for the gallery? Why didn't you just ask me?" Isabella, in the middle of rolling up her yoga mat, paused. Nightmare repeated, "Oh, it was a last-minute security deposit for a new artist. You look so busy, so I just went through Marcus. He's always so efficient." Her answer was seamless, her expression unreadable. "True, I can always count on Marcus," I said, not giving a second thought. I finished my breakfast in a few bites and stood up, ready to head to my home office to deal with some emails. "I have a spa day with friends today, so I won't be back for lunch," Isabella said from behind me. "All right, have fun." I walked into my office and opened my laptop. The interface for Apex's Polaris system automatically launched, a river of data flowing across the screen like a galaxy of blue stars. This was my world, a world built of logic and code. Here I was God. The morning passed quickly. Around noon, I finished the urgent tasks, stretched, and decided to go downstairs to make myself something to eat. As I passed the master bedroom, I heard a strange, suppressed sound from inside. Isabella was back. Didn't she go to the spa? A sliver of doubt entered my mind. On a strange impulse, I slowed my steps, moving silently toward the slightly ajar door. The sound from within were intermittent, a woman's soft gasps, mingled with a man's low, triumphant chuckle. "Take it easy, my sweet Isabella. That idiot Leo is probably still at the office, playing savior of the world." That voice. In an instant, my blood ran cold. It was Marcus, my most trusted friend, my brother. A roaring filled my ears. An invisible hand clenched around my heart, the pain so intense I could hardly breathe. I couldn't believe it. I had to be hearing things. I shoved the door open. The scene before me burned into my retinas like a red-hot brand. On our carefully chosen, obscenely expensive marriage bed, two naked bodies were tangled together. My wife, Isabella, the woman who was always so elegant and poised in my presence, was flushed and panting beneath Marcus Thorne. And Marcus, the man I consider my brother, was possessing my wife with the arrogant posture of a conqueror. In my house, in my bed, time seemed to freeze. They were stunned by my sudden entrance. Isabella let out a short scream, frantically pulling the sheets over her body, her face instantly draining of all color. Marcus's reaction was much faster. His shock quickly morphed into the anger of being caught, followed by a flicker of undisguised contempt. He calmly sat up, grabbed a robe, and draped it over his shoulders. He looked at me, a mocking smirk playing on his lips. "Leo, didn't you go to the office today?" His tone was as casual as if he were asking if I'd eaten lunch. My mind went blank. A firestorm of rage consumed all reason. I don't remember moving, only a primal roar tearing from my throat as I lunged, a wild animal, my fist aimed at Marcus's deceitful face. "I'll kill you." I expected to see him panic. I was wrong. Marcus simply tilted his head, easily dodging my punch. With my years spent hunched over a keyboard, I was no match for him and his regular gym routine. He grabbed my wrist and twisted. A sharp crack echoed in the room, followed by an explosion of pain. I screamed as he shoved me to the floor. He stood over me, his eyes as cold as a frozen lake, looking down at me as if I were a pathetic insect. "Leo, did you really think you were something special? Without me, your pathetic company would have failed 100 times over. You're just a nerd who only understands code. A useless waste. You, both of you." I struggled to get up, but the agony in my wrist left me powerless. I turned my head to look at Isabella, the woman I had loved for 5 years. There wasn't a trace of guilt on her face, only cold disgust and contempt. "I'm sick of you, Leo." Her shrill voice was a knife plunging into my heart. "Do you even know how to live? What can you do besides work? You're just a boring machine that makes money. You don't deserve me." "I don't deserve you." I trembled with rage. "I bought you the best house, the best cars, your gallery, your luxury goods. Which of those didn't come from me? I earned it." Isabella shrieked hysterically. "You owed it to me. You used those things to cage my youth." I looked at the two people I had trusted most in the world, their ugly faces making me sick to my stomach. It turned out I had been living in a colossal, laughable lie. My perfect marriage, my brotherhood, it was all bullshit. "You'll regret this." I hissed through clenched teeth. Marcus sneered. He walked to the nightstand and took something from the drawer. It was a syringe filled with a clear liquid. "Regret? No, we won't," he said, walking toward me. "We're just going to make you disappear from this world quietly. Your tech empire, your beautiful wife. From now on, they're all mine." My pupils contracted. Murder. They hadn't just betrayed me. They were going to kill me. I scrambled backward until my back hit the wall. There was nowhere left to run. Fear washed over me like a tidal wave. Marcus knelt, grabbing a fistful of my hair and slamming my head against the wall. Pain and dizziness made my vision go black. He pinned my body with his knee, pressing the cold needle against my neck. "Don't be afraid. It'll be quick," he whispered in my ear, his voice like the devil's. "It's a special heart medication. An overdose is untraceable." Tomorrow's headline will be, "Tech mogul Leo Vance dies suddenly from overwork." Dignified, don't you think? I felt the ice-cold prick of the needle piercing my skin. My consciousness began to fade, the strength draining from my body. The last thing I saw was Isabella's cold, beautiful face and Marcus's face, twisted in excitement. So this is hell. Beep, beep, beep. The shrill cry of an alarm. I snapped my eyes open, gasping for air like a drowning man. I was alive. I instinctively touched my neck. The skin was smooth, no puncture mark. I flexed my wrist. It was whole, no pain at all. I looked around. The familiar bedroom, the familiar sunlight, the familiar scent of perfume. I turned my head to the smart clock on the nightstand. The display read, Monday, 8:00 a.m. The third loop, in despair I sat on the bed, stunned, for a full 10 minutes. My brain felt like a scrambled mess, completely unable to process what was happening. Wasn't I dead? Injected with an overdose by Marcus, left to die on my bedroom floor. The agony of my heart seizing, the feeling of suffocation. It was all so real that my chest still ached from the memory. But here I was perfectly fine back in my bed. The time had reset to Monday morning at 8. A dream? Yes, it had to be a nightmare. An incredibly realistic nightmare, brought on by drinking too much and being under too much stress. I let out a long breath, trying to convince myself. I threw off the covers. The cool wood floor under my feet sent a shiver through me, clearing my head a little. No, I had to be sure. Instead of my usual routine, I walked straight out of the bedroom. In the living room, Isabella was in her white yoga outfit, stretching by the windows. The morning light cast a soft golden halo around her. Just like in my dream, my heart began to hammer against my ribs. You're awake. She turned, a gentle smile on her face. Breakfast is on the table. Your favorite omelet. Every word, every expression was identical to the dream. My throat was dry. I forced down the panic and tried to keep my voice steady. You're up early today. You're the one who said I have to stay in shape, or you won't love me anymore, she said with a playful pout. I had no memory of ever saying that. I sat at the table, staring at the steaming omelet, my appetite gone. By the way, I said, looking straight into her eyes, Marcus mentioned last night that you drew $5 million from the company. Was it for the gallery? Isabella's body tensed for a fraction of a second. Oh, It was a last-minute security deposit. You look busy, so I just went through Marcus. He's so efficient. The exact same answer. No, this wasn't a dream. A terrifying, absurd thought struck me like a bolt of lightning. Time had rewound. I was back at the morning of the day I was murdered. The idea was so insane, I almost laughed at myself. I was a man of science, an atheist. I believed in data and logic. Time loops were things you saw in sci-fi movies. But how else could I explain this? What's wrong? You look pale, Isabella said, walking over, reaching out to touch my forehead. I flinched back, dodging her hand. Her hand froze in midair, a flicker of surprise and annoyance on her face. I realized my reaction was too extreme. Taking a deep breath, I forced a smile. It's nothing, just a bit of a headache from last night. I'm going to the office. I'll skip breakfast. I fled to my home office and locked the door, leaning against it and gasping for air. Calm down, Leo. You have to calm down. I forced myself to think. As someone who lived by logic, the more incomprehensible the situation, the clearer my head needed to be. Assuming I really had gone back in time, what would happen next? According to the dream, Isabella would say she was going to the spa. Then, around noon, she and Marcus would come back here, to our marriage bed. My fists clenched so hard my knuckles cracked. I had to verify it. I had to know if this was a hallucination or the brutal reality. I opened my laptop and pulled up my home security system. Smart security was one of Apex's core businesses, and my system was top of the line. I had hidden cameras in every corner of the house, except the bedroom. That was out of respect for Isabella. The irony was suffocating. Time ticked by. At 10:30 a.m., Isabella left with her purse, driving away in her red Porsche. Everything seemed normal. I sat glued to the monitor, my eyes locked on the screens, too tense to even get a drink of water. 11:40 a.m. A black Mercedes S-Class slowly pulled into our building's underground garage. My pupils constricted. That was Marcus's car. I switched to the elevator camera. Marcus got out of his car, walked into the elevator, and selected our floor. He had a key fob for the elevator. My breathing grew ragged. A few minutes later, the camera at the front door showed it being opened with a key from the outside. Marcus walked in, changing his shoes like he owned the place. He didn't linger in the living room, but went straight upstairs toward the master bedroom, a blind spot for the cameras. My heart sank into a pit of ice. About 10 minutes later, Isabella's red Porsche returned to the garage. She parked and got into the elevator. She hadn't gone to any spa. My hand was shaking. The respect and privacy I thought I was giving her was just a convenient cover for their affair. I stared at the screen, waiting for the final verdict. If, at noon, they were in my bed, just like in the dream, then it wasn't a dream. It was a dress rehearsal for my own death. I don't know how I survived the next half hour. My mind was a chaotic storm of rage, humiliation, betrayal, and fear, a venomous cocktail eating away at my soul. 12:30 p.m. I stood up, my legs feeling weak. I walked to the bedroom door, my hand hovering over the doorknob, hesitating. I was afraid to see that soul-crushing scene again, but hiding wouldn't solve anything. I gritted my teeth and threw the door open. It was the exact same scene. On our expensive bed, two pale bodies were writhing like maggots. That idiot Leo is probably still at the office, playing savior of the world. Marcus's triumphant voice drilled into my ears again. Snap! The last thread of my sanity broke. This time, I didn't scream and charge. I turned, ran to my office, and unlocked a drawer, pulling out a golf club. A gift from a client, made of solid titanium. Heavy. I gripped the club and stormed back into the bedroom. The cheating pair clearly didn't expect me to return. Their faces showed the same shock and panic as before. Leo, you. Before Marcus could finish, I swung the club with all my might, aiming straight for his head. Thwack! A sickening, dull thud. Marcus didn't even have time to scream before he collapsed, blood and brain matter splattering across our white sheets. Isabella let out a piercing shriek. I ignored her, my eyes bloodshot. A rabid animal. I raised the club and brought it down again and again and again on Marcus's head until it was just a shapeless, pulpy mess. I'll kill you. I'll kill you both. Panting, I dropped the deformed club and turned to the trembling woman on the bed. Isabella was petrified, scrambling to escape, but I grabbed her by the ankle. No, don't kill me. Leo, I was wrong. I was so wrong. She sobbed, begging incoherently. I looked at her tear-streaked face, the face I was once so enchanted by, and felt nothing but disgust. Too late. I grabbed her by the neck, pinning her to the bed. She struggled wildly, her nails clawing at my arms, but my body was numb, filled only with hatred. Her struggles weakened, her pupils dilated, and finally, her body went limp. I let go and collapsed onto the floor, gasping. The room was thick with the metallic smell of blood and the silence of death. I looked at the wreckage, at the two cold bodies on the bed, and felt no satisfaction, only a hollow numbness. What now? Call the cops. Turn myself in. No, I couldn't let them off that easily. My mind raced. Suddenly, the sound of sirens wailed from outside. So soon. Who called them? I staggered to my feet and went to the window, pulling back a corner of the curtain. Several police cars were parked outside our building. I was stunned. There was no way Isabella had time to call anyone. Just then, my phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Mr. Vance, a cold, emotionless male voice said. It seems you've made your choice. Unfortunately, it was not the correct one. Who are you? My heart hammered. Who I am is not important. What's important is that the game must be played by the rules. As soon as he finished speaking, I heard a click from my office door. It was being unlocked from the outside. I spun around to see several large men in black suits, holding guns, storming in. All of them were pointed at me. Before I could react, a sharp pain blossomed in my chest. I flew backward as if hit by a train. In the last moment before my consciousness faded, I saw the tattoos on their arms. It was the logo for Quantum Dynamics. My competitor. Why? Beep, beep, beep. The shrill cry of the alarm. I snapped my eyes open. The familiar bedroom, the familiar sunlight. The smart clock on the nightstand displayed the time. Monday, 8:00 a.m. I was back. Again. The beginning of taunts and experiments. I lay in bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. The lingering scent of Isabella's perfume was still in the air. Everything was back to the beginning. I hadn't died. Or rather, I had died, but was resurrected on Monday at 8:00 a.m. This time, I no longer questioned if it was a dream. Two identical experiences had forced me to accept the absurd reality. I was trapped on this Monday. An endlessly repeating Monday. No, to be precise, a repeating week. The first time the accident was on Friday. The loop always restarted on Monday morning. My brain, running like an overclocked server, frantically processed the information. First loop, murdered by Isabella and Marcus. Second loop, I murdered them, only to be killed by a group of mysterious gunmen with the Quantum Dynamics logo. That cryptic phone call. The game must be played by the rules. What rules? Who made them? Was it Quantum Dynamics? Was Marcus not just my friend, but a corporate spy? Was Isabella on it too? Countless questions formed a massive web, and I was the prey, caught in its center. Every death sent me back to the start, to relive it all. Was this some supernatural phenomenon, or a meticulously designed conspiracy using some unknown advanced technology? I didn't know. All I knew was that I was trapped in a hopeless situation. I couldn't escape. I couldn't ask for help. Who would I tell? That I was stuck in a time loop? They'd lock me in a padded room. I couldn't even fight back. When I killed those two bastards, I only brought on a more terrifying enemy. What was I supposed to do? Like a zombie, I got out of bed, mechanically repeating the actions from the previous loops. Downstairs, in the living room, Isabella was still in her white yoga outfit, stretching in the morning light. You're awake? Breakfast is on the table. Your favorite omelet. That gentle smile, which now looked more horrifying to me than a demon's sneer. I ignored her, walking straight to the table. By the way, Marcus mentioned you took $5 million from the company. I repeated the conversation from the last two times, my voice flat. Isabella's reply was identical. Everything was playing out like a pre-written script, and I was the only actor who remembered his lines. No, I wasn't an actor. I was a lab rat in a cage, being toyed with for someone's amusement. After breakfast, I locked myself in my office. This time, I didn't bother with the security cameras. I already knew the ending. I sat at my computer and began frantically searching for information on time loops, quantum entanglement, and memory preservation. I tried to use my scientific knowledge to explain my situation, but no theory could account for my bizarre experience. 12:30 p.m. I didn't go to the master bedroom. I just sat quietly in my office, waiting. I could hear the front door open downstairs, then footsteps coming up, and finally, the bedroom door closing. The two of them were at it again. My heart was surprisingly calm. Was I angry? Of course. But more than that, I felt a profound sense of powerlessness. A despair that no matter what I did, I couldn't change the outcome. Maybe I should try something different. Call the police? I picked up my phone and dialed 911. 911. What's your emergency? I'd like to report a murder plot. They're going to kill me. Sir, please tell me your location and who is trying to kill you. I'm at One Harbor Crest. The murderers are my wife, Isabella Rossi, and my chief of staff, Marcus Thorne. Are they attempting to harm you right now, sir? No, but they're planning to kill me on Friday. A few seconds of silence on the other end. Sir, do you have any evidence? No, but I can see the future. Click. He hung up. I gave a bitter laugh. Of course. No one would believe a madman. What about running away? I shot up, grabbed a backpack from the closet, and stuffed it with clothes and all my cash and IDs. I ran downstairs, ignoring the sounds from the master bedroom, and bolted out the door. I drove like a bat out of hell, tearing through the streets of San Francisco with no destination in mind. Where could I go? I didn't know. I just wanted to escape that suffocating house, to escape this goddamn loop. I got on the highway heading toward Sacramento, flooring it. The car hit 110. The wind howled past, but it did nothing to ease the tightness in my chest. As I drove, I noticed a black Mercedes S-Class in my rearview mirror, keeping a steady distance. It was Marcus's car. How was he here? Wasn't he supposed to be in my house, screwing my wife? Could it be that no matter what I did, they knew my every move in advance? My heart sank. I swerved, trying to shake him, but the Mercedes stuck to me like glue. Just then my phone rang. The unknown number. I put on my Bluetooth earpiece and answered. Mr. Vance, the cold voice said. I told you. The game must be played by the rules. Running away is a violation. Who the hell are you? I roared. We are the ones who make the rules. Screw your rules. I screamed. Come and get me if you have the guts. As you wish. As the words faded, the steering wheel went slack in my hands. The brake pedal turned to mush, offering no resistance. The car was out of control. My mind went blank. They could remotely control my car. This was beyond anything I understood. What kind of technology was this? The car swerved wildly, a beast unleashed on the highway. I fought for control, but it was useless. Finally, it slammed into the center divider, flipped several times in the air, and crashed back to the ground with a deafening crunch. The airbag deployed, but I felt like my insides had been rearranged. The windshield was a spiderweb of cracks. Blood from my forehead blurred my vision. I saw the black Mercedes pull up next to my wrecked car. The door opened, and Marcus got out. He walked to my window, a pitying, cat-and-mouse smile on his face. Leo, I told you not to run. He pulled a gun from his pocket and aimed it at my head. Bang. Beep, beep, beep. The alarm. Monday, 8:00 a.m. I was back. Again. This time, I didn't even bother moving. Despair. Endless despair, like the cold, black ocean, finally consumed me. The prophet gamed the fourth loop. The 5th. The 10th. The 20th. I'd lost count of how many times I had died, only to wake up again on Monday morning. I had tried everything I could think of. I tried confronting Isabella and Marcus first thing in the morning, telling them I knew everything. They treated me like I'd lost my mind and had me committed. I died in the psychiatric hospital from an accidental heart attack. I tried asking my best friend for help, a high-level media executive. I told him everything. He promised to help me, then sold me out to Marcus. Turns out he'd been on Marcus's payroll for years. That night, I died in an accidental gas leak. I tried doing nothing. I lived my life as the perfect, oblivious victim. Monday through Thursday were peaceful. Isabella and Marcus played their roles as the perfect wife and loyal friend. Then, on Friday, on my way to a business trip, my brakes failed, and I plunged into the ocean. Exactly like my first nightmare. Every death chipped away at my hope. My love, my trust, my friendships, my career. Everything I had once been proud of was ground to dust in this cruel loop. I was a fly trapped in a glass jar. I could see the world outside, but I could never escape. Every struggle only ended with me bloodied and broken. After countless deaths, my mind finally snapped. On the Monday of the 21st loop, I didn't get out of bed. Isabella came in to check on me. I looked at her deceitful face and suddenly started to laugh. I laughed so hard tears streamed down my face. Isabella was terrified. You're insane. She stammered, backing away. That's right, I am. I leaped from the bed and lunged for her, my hands closing around her throat. This time, I didn't listen to her pleas. After she stopped breathing, I went to the kitchen, grabbed a fruit knife, and sat in the living room, waiting. At noon, Marcus let himself in with his key. He saw me and Isabella's body by the bedroom door and froze. I gave him no time to react. I rushed him, plunging the knife into his heart. After it was done, I didn't run. I didn't kill myself. I poured a glass of red wine and sat on the sofa, calmly waiting. Soon enough, the team of gunmen in black suits broke down the door. This time, I offered no resistance. I even raised my glass to them in a toast. Bang, bang, bang. The world went dark. Beep, beep, beep. The 22nd loop. I lay in bed, my eyes open, my mind a complete blank. After the extreme pain and despair, all that remained was a profound numbness. My heart, it seemed, was already dead. If nothing I did could change my fate, why bother struggling? This loop, wasn't it just a game with infinite retries? And Isabella, Marcus, and everyone else in this world, weren't they just NPCs with no memory? A crazy, intriguing idea began to sprout in my numb heart. If this was a game, why not have some fun? Once the thought appeared, it was impossible to suppress. I sat up in bed, a smile spreading across my face for the first time since the loop began. A cold, wicked smile. I went downstairs as usual. Isabella was doing yoga. You're awake? Breakfast. She didn't get to finish. I walked over, wrapped my arms around her from behind, and whispered in her ear, Darling, is that no man's land rose you're wearing? It smells divine. Though I have to say, I prefer the scent you have when you're screwing Marcus. That mix of sweat and desire. Isabella's body went rigid as stone. She spun around, her face drained of all color, staring at me in disbelief. What are you talking about? Am I wrong? I chuckled, gripping her chin and savoring the terror in her eyes. At 12:30 p.m., Marcus will come over. The two of you will try a few new positions on this very yoga mat. Then you'll go to our bedroom, get in our bed, and, as you're going at it, you'll curse me for being an idiot. Am I right? Isabella's lips trembled. She couldn't form a single word. She looked at me as if I were the devil himself. How could you know? Oh, I know more than that. I also know that on Friday, you plan to have my car remotely hacked while I'm driving to Sacramento. Brake failure. A tragic accident. Correct. Isabella's legs gave out, and she crumpled to the floor. Seeing her so utterly terrified sent a wave of sick, twisted pleasure through me. It felt so damn good. So this was what it felt like to be in control, to play God with these arrogant fools. No, that's not. Leo, let me explain. Isabella cried, crawling toward me, trying to grab my leg. I kicked her away. Explain? Fine. Take your time. Let me know when you've figured it out. I cheerfully sat down at the table and began to enjoy my omelet. It was delicious. Isabella remained a heap on the floor, staring at me with the eyes of someone seeing a monster. After breakfast, I didn't go to the office. I turned on the TV and watched the morning news. At 10 a.m., the doorbell rang. Isabella flinched. I glanced through the peephole. A delivery. I opened the door and signed for a package. It was a drone I'd ordered online a few days ago. In front of Isabella, I opened the box and began to assemble it. She watched me, not daring to breathe. As noon approached, my phone rang. I saw the caller ID. Marcus. I put on speaker. Hey, Leo. Marcus's familiar voice. Marcus, watches up. I asked nonchalantly, still fiddling with the drone. Leo, are you at the office today? There's something I need to discuss with you. Nope, taking a day off at home. Silence on the other end. Oh, okay then. I won't come by. Get some rest. He hung up. I glanced at the puddle that was Isabella on the floor and smirked. See? He's not coming. Her face was as white as a sheet. Who are you? You're not Leo. She stammered. Of course I'm Leo, I said, standing up and walking over to her. I crouched down and patted her pale cheek. A Leo who crawled his way back from hell. Now, that's it for day one's warm-up. Tomorrow, we'll play something more interesting. With that, I picked up the drone's remote and walked out to the balcony. I sent the drone soaring into the air, circling above our neighborhood. From this height, the city looked like a massive, intricate model, and I was the child who got to play with it. That day, I didn't die. When midnight passed and a new day began, I was unharmed. It seemed that as long as I didn't trigger their murder plot or make any rule-violating moves, I could survive the week. Then, on the next Monday, at 8 a.m., everything would reset. Perfect. It meant I had infinite time to play this game. The death experience and role-playing the 23rd loop. Monday, 8:00 a.m. I opened my eyes, feeling refreshed. Yesterday's warm-up had opened up a whole new world of dark humor and cruel fun. I was no longer a desperate victim. I was a director holding the script, a god who could see the future. I got out of bed at a leisurely pace, showered, and went downstairs. Isabella was doing yoga as always. You're awake? Breakfast is on the table. I cut her off with a smile. An omelet, right? I know. I also know you didn't sleep well last night. Had nightmares, did you? Isabella froze, staring at me in shock. I leaned in close, my voice a whisper only she could hear. Did you dream I became a demon and killed you all? Her pupils contracted, and her body began to tremble. Don't be afraid, I said, straightening up and patting her shoulder. Today we're going to play a game called Prophet. I ignored her and went to the table to eat. The omelet tasted even better today. After breakfast, instead of going to my office, I sat on the living room sofa and turned on the TV. Isabella, after cleaning the kitchen, stood awkwardly to the side. Have a seat. Why are you standing? I patted the cushion next to me. She hesitated before gingerly sitting down, leaving a person's worth of space between us. Relax, I said, flipping to the business channel. Let's watch the news. The anchor was reporting on the stock market. Influenced by overseas markets, the tech sector saw a general decline after the market opened, with quantum dynamics dropping more than 3% at opening. I watched the green line on the screen and smiled at Isabella. Want to bet that in 10 minutes, quantum dynamic stock will skyrocket and hit the limit up before closing? Isabella just stared at me blankly. How is that possible? The market is terrible right now, she refuted instinctively. Let's make a wager, I said, crossing my legs. If I win, you make me beef Wellington for lunch. If I lose, I'll sign over all my shares in your little gallery to you. Isabella's eyes lit up. The gallery shares were worth millions. Beef Wellington was just a bit of effort. It was a bet she couldn't lose. Fine, she agreed. I smiled and said nothing more, turning my attention back to the TV. The minutes ticked by. Quantum Dynamics stock continued to hover at its low point. A triumphant look began to form on Isabella's face. She probably thought I had truly gone insane. 9 minutes passed. Just as the 10th minute arrived, the stock chart on the screen erupted. A massive red line shot straight up. In a matter of seconds, Quantum Dynamics stock surged from a 3% loss to a 9% gain, just shy of the limit up. The anchor shouted, "A miracle! This is unbelievable." Just moments ago, Quantum Dynamics announced a major breakthrough in next-generation chip technology. Market confidence has exploded. The smug look on Isabella's face froze. Her jaw dropped. She stared at the screen, then back at me, as if looking at a monster. "You? How did you know?" "I told you. I'm a prophet," I said, leaning back on the sofa. "Now, a bet's a bet. Where's my beef Wellington?" Isabella stood up, looking dazed, and walked to the kitchen. I watched her go, the smile on my face widening. This little trick was child's play for me. In a previous loop, I had spent an entire week studying quantum dynamics business moves. I knew this announcement was coming today. Manipulating people was an addictive feeling. 11:00 a.m. Isabella was still busy in the kitchen. My phone rang. The caller ID showed Marcus. I answered, putting it on speaker. "Hey, Leo." "Marcus, just the man I wanted to talk to," I said casually. "I need you to go to the office right now, into my office. Get the blue folder from the safe and take it to the Black Swan Bistro in the Marina District. Give it to a woman in a red dress. And make sure it's there before noon." Marcus paused. "Leo, isn't that folder highly confidential? Give it to a stranger. Just do it. Don't ask so many questions," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. "All right, I'm on my way." I hung up and chuckled. That folder contained the company's core strategic plan for the next quarter, Apex's most valuable secret, and the woman in a red dress didn't exist. I just wanted to see how my loyal friend would react to a completely illogical order. I opened my laptop and hacked into the bistro's security cameras. At 11:50, Marcus appeared, clutching the blue folder, anxiously scanning the room. He paced for a full 10 minutes, searching everywhere, but found no woman in a red dress. At 12 p.m. on the dot, his phone rang. I watched him answer, his face turning pale as he frantically tried to explain something. I didn't need to guess who was calling. It was his contact at Quantum Dynamics. I had figured it out in a previous loop. Marcus met his contact every Monday at noon at the Black Swan Bistro to exchange information. Today, I had sent him to the same place at the same time with our company's biggest secret to wait for someone who wasn't real. It was like I had personally walked him into the line of fire. I could only imagine the fury on the other end of that call. They would think Marcus was playing them, or worse, that he had been exposed. From this day forward, the fragile trust between them, built on mutual greed, would be shattered. I closed my laptop, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. The rich aroma of beef Wellington drifted from the kitchen. Isabella emerged, carrying the dish, her face still etched with shock. "Well, time to eat," I said with a grin. Just then, the phone in Isabella's pocket buzzed. I looked at her and smiled. "Don't rush to answer. Let me guess, it's Marcus, right? He's going to tell you something came up, and he can't make it for a nooner." Isabella's hand, holding her phone, trembled violently. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a terror I had never seen before. In her eyes, I was no longer her husband. I was an all-knowing, all-powerful demon. Skill acquisition, combat, law, and hacking. After growing tired of the psychological games, I entered a new phase, one of cold, rational, and focused purpose. Taunts and tricks brought only fleeting, sick pleasure. That wasn't my ultimate goal. My goal was revenge. A perfect, flawless revenge that would leave them utterly ruined and in eternal damnation. To achieve that, seeing the future wasn't enough. I needed power. Real, tangible power to control every outcome. So, I began to use this infinite time forge to temper myself. First, combat. The humiliation of being so easily overpowered by Marcus in the early loops was seared into my bones. I realized that in a world without rules, raw violence was the most reliable guarantee. As a tech nerd who spent his life at a desk, physical prowess was my greatest weakness. I had to fix that. Starting with the 31st loop, the first thing I did every Monday was buy a top-tier membership at the largest fight club in San Francisco. I hired the best trainers money could buy. A Muay Thai champion, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, a Krav Maga master. I had only one demand: train me to be an elite fighter in the fastest, most brutal way possible. Money was no object. My hellish training began. 16 hours a day, I lived in the gym. My body was torn down and rebuilt daily. Sweat soaked through my clothes, and my muscles screamed with a pain so intense I could barely lift a finger. I was knocked down countless times, bruised and bloodied. But every time, I gritted my teeth and got back up, because I knew the pain was temporary. The next Monday, all my injuries would vanish. My body would reset to its perfect original state. But the skills, the muscle memory forged in fire, would remain. I was a sponge, absorbing everything that could make me stronger. I spent 10 loops learning the devastating elbows and knees of Muay Thai, 20 loops to master the submissions of BJJ, 50 loops to perfect the lethal, one-strike killing techniques of Krav Maga. I'd even go to the city's roughest neighborhoods at night and pick fights with gangs, honing my skills in real-world combat until they became instinct. I was no longer a helpless scholar. At the end of the 100th loop, I stepped into the octagon at the fight club. It took me 30 seconds to knock out the same Muay Thai champion who had once used me as a punching bag. He lay on a mat, staring up at me in shock and confusion, having no idea that to achieve that 30-second victory, I had been beaten by him tens of thousands of times in the loop. I stood in the center of the cage, feeling the explosive power coursing through me. This was the first cornerstone of my revenge. Second, the law. Brute force wasn't enough. That was the revenge of thug. My revenge had to be civilized, legal. I would use their own system to sentence them to death. From 101st loop, I moved my battlefield from the fight club to the law library at Stanford. As a genius in computer science, with a photographic memory and superhuman logical reasoning, learning was never a challenge. I spent 200 loops devouring every law book in existence, from the Constitution to the Criminal Code, from corporate law to civil procedure. Every word was etched into my brain like code. I studied the case files of every major white-collar crime and murder case from the past 50 years. I analyzed evidence chains, studied the tactics of top lawyers, and learned their logical traps. I even spent loops attending the trials of San Francisco's most brilliant lawyer, Annalise Croft, a legendary woman in her 40s known for her ruthless tactics, ironclad logic, and undefeated record. I downloaded recordings of all her trials and analyzed them frame by frame, studying her speaking style, her micro-expressions, her techniques for psychologically influencing a jury. By the end of the 300th loop, I could say without exaggeration that I was more knowledgeable in the field of law than 99% of the lawyers in the city. If I took the bar exam, I would be the only person in the country to get a perfect score. This was the second cornerstone of my revenge, a razor-sharp scalpel named law. Third, hacking. Information is the most critical weapon in modern warfare. I was going to strip Isabella and Marcus bare down to their very last secret. Their assets, their dark histories, their accomplices. I needed to know it all. This required the most elite hacking skills. Though I was an expert in AI, I was a novice in cybersecurity. So, from the 301st loop, I began my journey to become a god of hacking. I used the loops to infiltrate the internal networks of the world's most exclusive hacker groups. I moved like a ghost through their servers, learning their attack methods, stealing their code libraries. I spent 100 loops learning C, network protocols, and penetration testing from scratch. I used Apex's own firewall as my sparring partner, attacking it again and again, failing, and then, in the next loop, patching the vulnerabilities, optimizing the algorithms, and starting over. By the 500th loop, I could silently breach any of the world's supposedly most secure networks in under 10 minutes. A Swiss bank's encrypted accounts, the Pentagon's internal servers, they were all child's play. I had become a true phantom, a god walking through the world of data, combat law, and hacking. 500 loops, 500 weeks. In the real world, that was almost 10 years. 10 years to sharpen a sword. Now my sword was ready. I stood before the mirror, looking at my reflection. On the surface, I was the same mild-mannered Leo Vance. But my eyes had changed. They were as cold and deep as an abyss. I had transformed from a lamb waiting for slaughter into a hunter holding the butcher's knife. It was time to gather my evidence and finalize my plan. The eavesdropping storm and financial tracking, the 501st loop. Monday, 8:00 a.m. I opened my eyes and began my operation without a moment's hesitation. Step 1. Plant the bugs. I needed to hear their entire, detailed murder plot with my own ears. This wasn't just for evidence. It was to remind myself of how venomous my enemies were. I couldn't afford an ounce of mercy. From a hidden compartment in my office, I retrieved the microtransmitters I had built in previous loops using Apex's R&D equipment. They were smaller than a grain of rice and used advanced quantum entangled communication, making their signals undetectable and unblockable. I moved through my own home like a ghost. Isabella's car, her purse, our bedroom, the chandelier in the living room, even the bathroom air vent. I bugged every location they might use for their private conversations. Once finished, I resumed my role as the clueless, loving husband. At noon, I made an excuse to go to the office, leaving the house to them. I sat in my office at Apex Tower, put on a custom earpiece, and the world went silent. All I could hear were the voices of those two bastards. I listened to them fornicate in my bed. Listened to them use the filthiest language to mock my incompetence and stupidity. Listened as they discussed how they would forge my will and divide my assets after I was dead. Are you sure the program to disable the brakes will work? Don't worry. Marcus's voice was full of confidence. I wrote the code myself. It's untraceable. As soon as Leo's car hits that coastal highway, I press enter right here, and he and his car will end up as fish food. The police will rule it a simple traffic accident. And the company shares? They'll all be inherited by me, right? Of course. Once the shares are in your name, you'll sell the company to me, citing a lack of business acumen. I'll have Quantum Dynamics make you an offer you can't refuse. Then, you'll be off traveling the world with a few billion in cash, and I'll be the CEO of Apex Innovations. We'll be the true king and queen of San Francisco. Oh, Marcus, you're so good to me. The sound of sickening kisses came through the earpiece. My face remained expressionless. My heart felt nothing. After 500 loops, their words could no longer stir any anger in me. I was a cold analyst, recording every key piece of information. Remote control programs, forged wills, deals with quantum dynamics. Excellent. This would all become evidence to send them to hell. The next day, I began step 2, financial tracking. Marcus, the brother I once trusted with my life, had not only betrayed me, but was also bleeding my company dry. I would claw back every single cent he had stolen with interest. I locked myself in my office, my fingers flying across the keyboard like a concert pianist. Lines of code flow before my eyes. I easily bypassed the bank's firewalls and accessed Marcus's personal accounts. His transaction history was clean. No large, suspicious deposits besides his salary and bonuses. The wolf was cautious, but that wouldn't stop me. Using a data tracing program I'd written in a previous loop, I started tracking his expenditures. I soon found a discrepancy. Every month, he wired a moderately large sum to a distant relative in the Midwest. $50,000. Did a relative in a rural town need a $50,000 monthly allowance? I immediately focused on that relative's account. Using it as a springboard, I began to peel back the layers of Marcus's complex money laundering network. He was using the identities of over a dozen relatives to open various accounts. He embezzled funds from the company, broke them down into countless small transactions, and moved them into these accounts like an army of ants. Then, through a series of shell corporations, he funneled the money into a secret offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The entire process was seamless. Without my godlike perspective and elite hacking skills, it would have been impossible to trace. I stared at the staggering number in that secret account. $320 million. My money. The value created by the hard work of every Apex employee. Now, it was his retirement fund. I gave a cold sneer and copied all the transaction records and account information, making 360 encrypted backups in various formats. This would be the weight that crushed him. While I was at it, I did a quick check on my dear wife, Isabella. What I found was shocking. This woman, who always acted like an ethereal artist above worldly matters, had a secret, vicious gambling habit. She made frequent trips to Las Vegas, blowing fortunes in the high roller rooms of various casinos, mostly losing. Her so-called high-end gallery was nothing more than a front to launder money and cover her gambling debts. She fabricated sales at art exhibitions and auctions, turning the investment I gave her into gambling chips. I even discovered she was intimately involved with a casino magnate in Vegas, an old flame from her college days. So, Marcus wasn't the only one she was cheating on me with. My dear wife was full of surprises. I saved all of her gambling records, money laundering evidence, and the intimate photos of her with her old lover. With that, every secret held by those two bastards was laid bare before me. I now possessed enough evidence to destroy them 100 times over. All the pieces were in place. All that was left was to devise the perfect plan for their eternal damnation. Uncovering weaknesses and formulating the plan with all the evidence in hand, I didn't act immediately. Revenge is an art form. Simply sending them to prison or bankrupting them was too merciful. What I wanted was to leave them broken in body and spirit. Not only would they be destroyed legally, financially, and socially, but I would also strike the deepest, most precise blow to their psyches. I wanted them to live out their days in endless despair and terror. To do that, I had to find their deepest, most fatal weaknesses. I began a new series of observation loops. This time, I didn't toy with them or practice new skills. I became a master psychologist, using 100 loops to observe and study them from every possible angle. I watched Isabella. I discovered that what she cared about most was her socialite status. She reveled in being adored, in being chased by the media. She meticulously maintained her persona as an elegant artist and the perfect wife. Her greatest fear was losing it all, being knocked off her pedestal and reverting to the girl she once was, from a faded, educated family, with nothing but her beauty. Her vanity was her fatal flaw. I watched Marcus. He was more complex. On the surface, he was modest, confident, and a masterful networker. But through countless observations, I found that deep down, he was plagued by extreme insecurity and a profound sense of inadequacy. He came from a poor, rural background, the sole hope of his family. The vast class disparity he encountered in San Francisco had twisted his mind. He desperately craved success while being deeply ashamed of his origins. He was jealous of my talent, attributing my success to luck. Everything he did was an attempt to prove himself, to replace me. What he cared about most was his ability and status. He loved the feeling of being in control. His greatest fear was having his incompetence and humble origins exposed. His arrogance was his fatal flaw. During my observations, I also discovered some interesting little secrets. Marcus, the man who was always impeccably dressed, had severe germophobia and a crippling fear of heights. In one loop, I deliberately took him to the rooftop of the apex tower. Standing near the edge, his face went white, his legs trembled, and he nearly collapsed. In another loop, I accidentally spilled coffee on his custom suit. The look on his face was worse than if his father had died. He spent the next half hour in the restroom trying to clean it. And Isabella, besides gambling, had another secret, a severe peanut allergy. Once I had our housekeeper accidentally use a bit of peanut oil in a dish. Isabella took one bite and broke out in hives, struggling to breathe, nearly going into anaphylactic shock. Germophobia, acrophobia, a peanut allergy. Excellent tools for psychological torture. After thoroughly dissecting them, I began to formulate my revenge. I locked myself in my office for an entire loop, mapping out a complex web of character relationships and operational flowcharts on a massive whiteboard. My plan had 3 interconnected, escalating stages. Phase 1, financial annihilation. I would destroy their financial foundations in the shortest time possible. I would make Marcus spit out the $320 million he embezzled, with interest, and leave him saddled with enormous debt. I would have Isabella's gallery shut down for money laundering and tax evasion, turning her from a business owner into a bankrupt pauper. At the same time, using the insider information I had, I would launch a devastating financial attack on their backer, Quantum Dynamics. I would cut off all their escape routes and support. Phase 2, social execution. Just as they were hitting rock bottom, panicked and helpless, I would stage the climax of my revenge. I would choose the most glamorous, high-profile stage possible, the Apex Innovations annual charity gala. In front of every socialite and media outlet in San Francisco, I would reveal the evidence of their affair and my murder plot. In one night, they would go from being the objects of envy to social pariahs, hunted by all. They would be abandoned by their families, scorned by their friends, and buried alive by society. Phase 3, legal judgment. After their social execution, with their spirits completely crushed, I would deliver the final blow, the law. I would hand over the mountain of irrefutable evidence I had collected to the police. I would hire the best lawyer in the city, Annalise Croft, to lead a dream team of attorneys. I would ensure they receive the maximum possible sentences for attempted murder, corporate espionage, embezzlement, and money laundering. I would see them spend the rest of their miserable lives rotting in prison. Financial annihilation, social execution, and legal judgment. This was the triple concerto I had composed for them. I looked at the perfect, seamless plan on the whiteboard and smiled. I had rehearsed every step, every detail, hundreds of times in the loop. There would be no mistakes. Now I needed an ally, an absolutely loyal ally, who could help me execute this plan after I broke free from the loop. Many of the steps required an agent, as it would be inconvenient for me, the victim, to act directly. One person came to mind, the company's CTO, Dana Pierce. The loyalty test and the final loop. Dana Pierce, 30, Chief Technology Officer of Apex Innovations. A true tech genius and an undeniable eccentric. She lived in plaid shirts and jeans, wore black-rimmed glasses, had perpetually messy hair, and possessed social skills that were practically non-existent. But in the world of code, she was a queen. Her passion for technology was a pure, almost fanatical devotion. I had personally recruited her from MIT, appreciating her talent and giving her maximum authority and creative freedom. In my heart, she was like another child to me, alongside the Polaris system itself. I had a natural trust in her. But after the betrayals of Isabella and Marcus, my faith in humanity was shattered. I couldn't bring myself to trust anyone easily again, not even Dana. So before I officially made her my ally, I had to put her through the most rigorous, comprehensive stress test. Over the next few loops, I designed a series of trials for her. The first trial, the lure of money. Using an anonymous overseas email, I sent her a message. The offer was simple. Quantum Dynamics was willing to offer her 5 times her current salary, plus 1% of the company's founding shares, to jump ship. The only condition was that she bring the source code for the Polaris system with her. It was an offer anyone would find impossible to refuse. 1% of the shares meant a fortune of at least $1 billion. I quietly waited for her reply. A day passed, then 2, then 3. She never responded. On Thursday, I had Marcus, under my instruction, talk to her, subtly hinting that the company's finances were looking shaky and that she should consider her options. Dana's response was unforgettable. She pushed up her glasses, looked at Marcus as if he were an idiot, and said, "As long as Leo is here, Apex won't fall. And even if it does, I'll be right there with him to start over." The second trial, the corruption of power. In another loop, I announced I was going overseas for a week-long business trip. In my absence, all company affairs would be jointly managed by Marcus and Dana. I gave them equal power, nearly equivalent to that of the CEO. It was an insidious setup. I wanted to create conflict between them to see how Dana would act in a power struggle. As expected, Marcus immediately began using his authority to sideline Dana, attempting to seize full control of the tech department. He vetoed all of her new R&D proposals and transferred several of her key engineers to other departments. Rumors flew that Dana was on her way out. Everyone expected a fierce battle, but she didn't fight back. She didn't complain to anyone, nor did she tattle to me. She simply locked herself in her office and continued working on the vetoed projects on her personal laptop. On Friday, I returned. I asked her why she didn't counterattack. She looked at me and said calmly, "Infighting will destroy the company. My job is to ensure our technology stays ahead. Nothing else matters." The third trial, a life and death choice. In another loop, I staged an accident. A fire broke out in the company's server room due to an electrical short. At the time, only Dana and a few other engineers were inside. The fire spread quickly, filling the room with thick smoke. Everyone ran for the exit, but Dana ran against the crowd, back into the heart of the fire. She wasn't trying to save files or equipment. She was trying to save the one server that held the core source code of the Polaris system, the culmination of our 5 years of work. When the firefighters arrived, they found her collapsed on the floor from smoke inhalation, still clutching the scorching hot hard drive. She was rushed to the hospital in a deep coma. I stood by her bedside, looking at her soot-blackened face, my heart filled with a complex mix of emotions. She had passed every test. Her loyalty to technology was like a religion. Her faith in me was like that of a fan for their idol. She was the one, the only ally I could trust with my life. The 1000th loop. After countless weeks in hell, all my preparations were complete. My body was a lethal weapon. My brain was a law library. My fingers could unlock any digital door in the world. My revenge plan was flawless, and I had found my most loyal ally. I knew this would be the last time I would have to endure this damned week. My actions this week were unnaturally calm. I had a romantic candlelit dinner with my oblivious wife, Isabella, listening to her stories about the gallery with an adoring smile. I held a productive strategy meeting with my loyal chief of staff, Marcus, discussing the company's future and entrusting him with great responsibility. But beneath this calm facade, I was silently setting the final pieces on the board. During a server inspection, I used my highest level clearance to install a physical backdoor program that only I knew about. While organizing my office, I placed a critical, forged letter of investment intent where I would accidentally find it later. During an accidental encounter with Annalise Croft, I used a few seemingly casual remarks to successfully pique her interest in the topic of legal loopholes in white-collar crime. Everything was under my control. The clock struck midnight on Sunday. A new day had arrived. I lay in bed, my eyes closed, quietly waiting for the shrill alarm I had heard 1,000 times before. But the alarm never rang. The seconds ticked by. 8:01 a.m. 8:02 a.m. 8:10 The world did not reset. I shot my eyes open and leaped out of bed. I rushed to the window and threw open the curtains. Outside, the brilliant morning sun of a new week, a new Monday, streamed in. The loop was over. A cold, bloodthirsty smile slowly spread across my face. The hunt had officially begun. The Last Supper. This was my 1001st, and in truth, my very first Monday morning. No jarring alarm, no death countdown. Time had finally resumed its linear, relentless march forward. I felt every cell in my body greedily drinking in the precious, real, and fresh air. I stood at the window, watching San Francisco awaken. In the distance, the steel and glass jungles of the financial district reflected the cold light. Once that was my battlefield, my glory. Now, it was about to become my judgment hall. A slight rustle came from behind me. Isabella was awake. "Leo, why are you up so early?" Her voice was husky with sleep. I turned, my face already fixed with the gentle smile I had practiced 1,000 times. "Couldn't sleep. I wanted to make you breakfast." Isabella paused, then smiled. It was a smile tinged with an almost imperceptible, condescending superiority. In her mind, this nerd was probably trying to please her again with his clumsy gestures. "Oh, well, I'd love to taste what our great CEO can cook up." I went to the kitchen and tied on an apron. In one of the loops, I had spent an entire week training with a 3-star Michelin chef. A lavish breakfast was nothing. French scrambled eggs, pan-seared asparagus, perfectly toasted bread, and a cup of hand-poured Blue Mountain coffee. When Isabella saw the 5-star hotel-worthy spread on the table, her face was a picture of undisguised surprise. When did you learn to do all this?" "I wanted to surprise you," I said with a smile, pulling out her chair. "Try it. See if you like it." Isabella sat down, tentatively picking up her knife and fork. The moment the first bite of eggs touched her lips, her eyes lit up. "Oh my God, this is delicious." I watched the genuine pleasure on her face, a pleasure born from good food, and my heart was a block of ice. A woman who was about to murder her husband was, at this very moment, contentedly enjoying the breakfast he had lovingly prepared for her. The irony of human nature was staggering. After breakfast, I drove to the office as usual. The journey was uneventful. No out-of-control cars, no mysterious phone calls. Everything was back on its normal track. When I arrived, Marcus was already waiting outside my office, his face wearing that trademark modest smile. "Morning, Leo. Here are the documents that need your signature today." I took the folder, signed my name without even looking, and handed it back. "Thanks, Marcus. You're a lifesaver." I clapped him on the shoulder. "By the way, are you free tonight? Let's have dinner. Bring Isabella. The three of us haven't gotten together in a while." A flicker of delight crossed Marcus's eyes. Dinner, the night before my business trip? To him, this was undoubtedly the perfect opportunity to lower my guard. "Of course, Leo. Whatever you say." "Great. I'll book a table at La Lune, that new French place on the Embarcadero." "Sound good, Leo." Marcus took the signed documents and left my office. As he turned, I clearly saw the triumphant, irrepressible smirk on his face. I sat behind my desk, slowly raising my coffee cup. The Last Supper. Let the revenge begin with a farewell dinner. I sent an encrypted message to Dana. "Bait is out. Prepare to spring the trap." 3 seconds later, her reply came. A single word. Hello, New World night fell. The lights along the Embarcadero glittered like scattered diamonds. La Lune was on the top floor of a restored historic building, its spectacular views encompassing the entire sweep of the bay. Isabella and Marcus were already there when I arrived. She was stunning in a black, backless gown, her makeup flawless. He was dapper in a tailored Armani suit. Sitting together, they looked like the perfect couple. "Leo, you're late. You owe us a drink," Marcus said with a smile, standing to pull out my chair. "Sorry, something came up at the office," I replied with an apologetic smile. "It's on me tonight. Order whatever you want." Isabella picked up the menu, her eyes meeting Marcus's over the top of it. Their shared glance was full of unspoken understanding and the thrill of an impending victory. They probably thought that I, the idiot, was about to vanish from the face of the earth, and they were on the cusp of their new world. The food arrived quickly. Premium caviar, a perfect beef Wellington, paired with a bottle of 82 Lafite. The atmosphere was convivial. We talked about the company's future, Isabella's gallery, and other trivial matters. I played the part of the generous boss and doting husband, completely oblivious. They played their parts as the perfect wife and loyal subordinate. All three of us wore false smiles, our minds filled with our own dark thoughts. It was a masterful, Oscar-worthy performance. After a few glasses of wine, I set my glass down and sighed dramatically. "Honestly, Marcus, Isabella, I don't know what I would have done without you all these years." My voice was filled with sincere gratitude. Apex is what it is today because of you, Marcus. And our home is a warm and wonderful place all because of you, Isabella. You two are the most important people in my life. They exchanged another look, their smiles widening. "Leo, don't say that. We're family," Marcus said, raising his glass. "Yes, family," Isabella echoed, lifting hers. "To family," I said with a broad smile, raising my own glass. The three glasses clinked together in the air, a clear, crisp sound, like the sound of something shattering. After the toast, I stood up. "Excuse me for a moment." I left the private room, but didn't go to the restroom. I walked out onto the restaurant's terrace. I took out my phone and dialed Dana's number. "You can begin." "Understood." I hung up, lit a cigarette, and stood on the terrace. The San Francisco night wind was cold against my face, but my heart was on fire. I finished the cigarette and went back inside. Isabella and Marcus were whispering about something. They fell silent when I entered. "Shall we go?" I asked. "Okay." We left the restaurant, took the elevator down to the garage. "I'll give you a ride," I said, walking toward my Maybach. "No need, Leo," Marcus stopped me. "You have an early start for your trip tomorrow. You should get some rest. I'll take Isabella home." I looked at him and smiled. "All right then." I watched them get into Marcus's black Mercedes. The car slowly pulled away and disappeared from view. I stood still, took out my phone, and opened an app. The interface was simple, a single red button. Above the button were two words, "The Judgment." I watched the direction the Mercedes had gone, and gently, I pressed the button. A line of text appeared on the screen. "Triple Concerto, first movement. The funeral of money has begun." I put my phone away and got in my car. As I drove home, I turned on the stereo. Beethoven's Fifth Symphony filled the car, a powerful, triumphant score of struggle and victory. Hello, my new world. First movement, the funeral of money. The second week after breaking the loop. Monday, an earthquake of magnitude 8.0 struck San Francisco's financial circle. At 9:30 a.m., just as the NASDAQ opened, the stock of tech giant Quantum Dynamics began to plummet without warning. It hit the circuit breaker at opening. The entire market was in an uproar. No one knew what was happening. Rumors flew. Some said their new generation of chips had a fatal flaw. Others said their entire lead science team had resigned en masse and jumped ship to Apex Innovations. Still others whispered that their CEO had been taken in for questioning by the SEC for insider trading. Panic spread like a virus among investors. Sell orders flooded the market. Quantum Dynamics stock price was pinned to the floor. In a single day, its market value evaporated by over $30 billion. And the architect of it all was me. Right now, I was sitting in my top-floor office at Apex Tower, leisurely sipping coffee and watching the terrifying green line on my computer screen. Last week, using the knowledge of their business loopholes and financial fraud I'd gained in the loop, I had quietly built a massive short position against them through an untraceable offshore company registered in Panama. Then, just before the market opened this morning, I had anonymously leaked the fatal evidence to several of the most aggressive financial media outlets. The result was this. A perfect, precise, surgical strike. My phone rang. It was Dana. "Boss, everything is going according to plan. Our models predict at least 3 more days of hitting the circuit breaker. Their cash flow will be completely severed soon." "Excellent," I said calmly. "Initiate Plan B." "Understood." Plan B was for Marcus. At the same moment I hung up, a technical storm was breaking within Apex. All of the key projects led by Marcus, projects that constituted 80% of the company's business, suffered catastrophic data corruption and system failures overnight. Their collapse meant that for the next few months, Apex Innovations would have zero revenue. The entire company was paralyzed. Vice presidents and department heads stormed Marcus's office. "Marcus, what the hell is going on? Our partnership with the biggest e-commerce platform in North America just imploded. Their lawyers are demanding $1 billion in damages. Marcus, the predictive module of the Polaris system is shot. Hundreds of our logistics partners have their shipments going to the wrong places. The company's reputation is ruined." Marcus. Marcus sat behind his desk, his face ashen. He stared at the gibberish and error messages on his screen, his mind a complete blank. Impossible. He had personally built these systems. He knew how stable they were. How could they all crash overnight? He frantically typed, trying to find the source of the problem. But he discovered that the source code of every system had been altered. The modifications were brilliant, subtle, and had been framed to look like his own work. All the server logs pointed to his personal account. It was a trap, a custom-built trap with no escape. He snapped his head up, his mind racing to one person. Leo. It had to be Leo. He knew. He had been acting all along. Just as the horror dawned on him, his office door opened. Several people from the legal and audit departments walked in. The lead investigator placed a document on his desk, his face expressionless. "Mr. Thorne, we've received an anonymous tip regarding allegations of embezzlement, misappropriation of company funds, and leaking of core trade secrets. As of now, you are suspended. Please cooperate with our investigation." Then his personal phone began to ring off the hook. It was the bank. "Mr. Thorne, your secret account with us has been frozen due to suspected money laundering activities. All of your assets, including property and stocks, will be frozen as well." It was his distant relatives. "Marcus, the police are here. They're saying we helped you launder money. We don't know anything." It was Isabella. "Marcus, you son of a bitch. My gallery has been shut down for tax evasion. All my bank cards are frozen. What the hell is going on?" One call after another, each one a hammer blow to his skull. He felt the world crumbling around him. In just a few hours, he had gone from a man on the verge of ultimate success to a disgraced, debt-ridden criminal. Everything he had, wealth, status, women, was vanishing at an astonishing speed. He slumped in a chair, his eyes vacant, a puppet with its strings cut. He knew it was over. He had fallen into a bottomless pit, and the man who had pushed him was now standing at his office door, a look of pity, the pity of a god, on his face. "Marcus, what's wrong?" I asked with concern, walking in. "You look terrible." Pulling the rug out and dreams come true, Marcus snapped his head up, his eyes bloodshot, glaring at me as if he wanted to tear me apart. "It was you. You did this, didn't you?" he roared, a caged beast. I didn't answer. I just walked to his desk, picked up the suspension notice, and shook my head in disappointment. TSK. What a shame. I tossed the document back on the desk. "Marcus, I trusted you. I treated you like a brother. Is this how you repay me? Embezzling funds, selling out the company. You've disappointed me so much." My performance was flawless. The surrounding colleagues stared at Marcus with contempt and anger. "I didn't do it." Marcus struggled to stand, but two security guards held him down. "You framed me. Thou, you're a despicable, shameless bastard." "Frame you?" I laughed, a light, airy sound. "Why would I do that? You're my right-hand man, a company hero." I leaned in close, my voice a whisper only he could hear. "By the way, that remote brake control program you wrote was quite good. Pity about that one little bug." Marcus's pupils constricted. He stared at me in utter disbelief, his lips trembling, speechless. He understood. I knew everything. I had been playing him all along. Watching the look of pure horror on his face filled me with a cathartic pleasure. The best way to destroy a man is to utterly crush him in the field he's most proud of. Marcus thought his plan was foolproof. He had no idea that to a god, all his clever little tricks were just a pathetic joke. "Take him away," I said to the guards, straightening up, my voice full of resignation and weariness. Marcus was dragged out of the office like a stray dog, his eyes still locked on me, burning with hatred. I ignored him and walked to the massive floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the bustling city. The show was just getting started. As Marcus was being taken away, the next phase of my plan was already in motion. I called an emergency meeting of all company executives. The atmosphere in the boardroom was thick with tension. Everyone was pale and worried. The company's core projects were paralyzed. Our main competitor, Quantum Dynamics, though wounded, was not dead. Once they recovered, they would surely take advantage of our internal chaos to launch a fatal attack. Apex Innovations was facing its greatest existential crisis. All eyes were on me, the company's soul, waiting to see how I would lead them out of this mess. I walked to the front of the room and calmly spoke. I know everyone is worried, but I want to tell you that everything is going according to plan. My words stunned them into silence. From this day forward, we are abandoning all of the old projects that were managed by Marcus. I clicked a remote, and a new, futuristic logo appeared on the giant screen behind me. I'd like to introduce you to Project Genesis, a new generation intelligent supply chain management system that CTO Dana Pierce and I have been secretly developing for the past 2 years. I proceeded to showcase the immense power of the Genesis system. It was 10 times faster than our old Polaris system, 30% more accurate in its predictions, and 50% cheaper to operate. It was a revolutionary product, powerful enough to upend the entire industry. The boardroom was silent. The executives stared at the data on the screen, their expressions shifting from shock to disbelief to finally pure elation and awe. So, you're saying, one VP asked, his voice trembling, we're not in a crisis at all. We're about to take over the world. That's right, I said with a smile and snapped my fingers. Dana, send our partners a little gift. Yes, boss. Miles away in the server room, Dana hit enter. Instantly, all of our hundreds of logistics partners received a system update notification for Project Genesis. They were amazed to find that the new system not only fixed all the previous bugs, but also doubled their operational efficiency. Our customer service lines were flooded. Mr. Vance, your new system is incredible. Mr. Vance, we want to sign a 10-year exclusive partnership agreement. The boardroom erupted in thunderous applause. Everyone was on their feet, looking at me as if I were a god. They had no idea that this system, supposedly developed over 2 years, had actually been written by me in just 3 days during 1 week of a time loop. This was an absolute intellectual checkmate. I looked out the window in the direction of the Quantum Dynamics headquarters and smirked. Marcus, didn't you always want to replace me? Didn't you think the company would fall apart without you? Now you get to watch. Without you, Apex will only become more glorious. And you, and your backers at Quantum Dynamics, will become the first stepping stone on our path to the throne. I even had a special gift for him. I'd already arranged for my lawyers to post his bail. I'd also convinced the board to temporarily let him keep his title. I was going to let his dream come true. I was going to let him sit in that coveted CEO chair. And then, at the height of his glory, I would personally push him into the abyss. To give hope, only to utterly destroy it. That is the cruelest revenge of all.